Go ahead.
Okay.
It's being recorded now.
So we should start with the meaning of zakat. Basically, zakat meaning, if you open the dictionary, you will see three things, three linguistic, literal meaning. One is purification. It purifies, and I will tell you how does it apply in zakat system. Second is praise. Even that context, Allah have used the word zakah, wala tuzakku anfusakum, praise. And third is increase. Increase, it's namu. It's actually increases the wealth also. And how these three meaning, which have the zakah in literally it have three meaning: purification, praise, and increase. How these three meaning apply in the context of the zakah, which we know of as an obligatory charity. When you give your wealth, when you give zakah from your wealth, it purifies your wealth. We all know this meaning. When a recipient, deserving recipient, will receive that money of zakah, either the family will praise you, although we should not give to get the praise, we only give for the sake of Allah, but they might praise us back, or even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the angels will praise us in the dunya and inshallah akhirah. So that have the meaning of praise. And then third is the increase. When you give zakah, it will going to increase your hasanat here, and it will going to increase your wealth here, because Rasulullah said so, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the meaning of zakah, how it's related with zakah. When it comes to the difference between the other religion versus Islam, if you see all the other mazahib, let's focus on Semitic religion, major mazahib, a major religion, you will see that almost all the mazahib, all the religion, all the religion spoke about helping the poor. They spoke about helping the poor. The major difference, however, between Islam and other will be few. First, even though Christianity, Jews, Judaism, Hinduism, they spoke about taking care of the poor, feeding the needy, but Islam goes above and beyond recommendations, and Islam made it as an annual obligatory worship act. This is what Islam did. Islam said that you will get a punishment, you will get a sin. It's one of the obligatory act if you won't give zakah. So basically, in other mazahib, in other religion, minimum you have to receive zakah if the rich person in the community wants to feel they want to get close to God. It's recommended they will give charity. In Islam, it's actually obligatory on the rich person. Whether he would like to give or not, or she would like to give or not, they have to come up with 2.5% at least. So that's the concept of Islam, which is a beautiful system. And then minimum amount is also described in Islam, that 2.5%. Kinds of wealth is already been described in Islam, that what kind of wealth is zakatable. Recipients are already describable, so that there's no chance of abusing of the recipients. No other religion have gone above and beyond to give these guidelines which Islam have given, and in making it obligatory. And Islam made zakah a system like social security. If you are a rich, you are giving today to poor. So tomorrow, if you are poor, you are going to receive the zakah from the rich. That's a system of, so many times people will ask, oh, why can't we give zakah money to help the disbelievers? And the answer to that question is our obviously there is a detailed answer, but the brief answer from the objective standpoint, our kindness should be extended to all the people regardless of their faith. We should not ask a person before feeding that person whether he's a Muslim or non-Muslim. But when it comes to system of zakah, we can give them from the random charity. But when it comes to the system of obligatory zakah, where the recipients are already defined, it's like a system of social security, where you are giving as a rich to the poor today, so that tomorrow, if you are poor, you will be receiving from the rich. Like if you are in America, you will either be receiving the social security or you'll be giving social security. A person in Palestine or Pakistan or Somalia or Egypt cannot say, no, why I'm not getting social security in America? You're not part of that system. Similarly, zakah is a system. So that's why we have defined recipients, but it does not mean that we should not help people from the other regular forms of charity. So there are two different aspects which we should keep in mind. And then there is further room of how to help the non-Muslim from the money of zakah. We will speak later, inshallah. Last thing, before we can open it up for further interaction, is that from the historical standpoint, Quran spoke about zakah and salah together many times. And obviously, one of the famous commentary on this by Imam Hamiduddin Farahi, rahimahullah, he was saying in his tafsir that why you would see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention zakah and salah together, even though hajj is also obligatory, even though fasting is also obligatory. But many a times you will see at least 27 times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say salah and zakat together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us a message. Even though other acts are also obligatory, that if you see salah will connect you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and zakah, you are helping people. So basically, one is connecting you to Allah, salah, and zakah will connect you to people. And that is basically the summary of the entire religion. That's the fundamental of the religion. Be good with Allah and be good with people. So that's why you will see salah and zakah mentioned all the time. From the historical standpoint, now when zakah became mandatory, did it become mandatory in Makkah? Did it become mandatory, obligatory in Medina? If it became obligatory in Medina, when did it become obligatory? These are huge disagreements among these scholars. So some scholars went with that actually, no, it became obligatory in Makkah. Like Ibn Kathir, Imam Tabari said, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Makki Quran words like zakah in Namal, in Rum, in Luqman, in A'raf, in Mu'minun. But it became as an institution in Medina. While other scholars like Imam Nawawi said that no, it became obligatory in Medina in the second year before fasting. And then there are other scholars like Ibn Hajar, they would say that it became obligatory around the 550th year of Medina after the fasting. So there are disagreements, but it's an undeniable fact that now it is obligatory. So regardless of that academic discussion when it became obligatory, now we can see it's an obligatory act and we have to give it, and we have to give it to the proper recipients. Now, how to give it, how to calculate, what are the zakatable wealth, and then how you calculate, and then what are the recipients, whom to give, whom not to give, what are the contemporary issues. I will leave that for the Q&A, for the interaction. And with this introduction, let's have the interaction, inshallah, so that we can make it more fruitful, inshallah.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Shoaib again. सबसे पहले मेरा एक सवाल ये होगा कि अगर आप my question, my apologies. My question is that if you can please tell us what are the explicit sayings in the Quran about zakat, and what are the explicit sayings in the ahadith about the zakat. So the difference, so what Quran said about zakat and what Huzur Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said about the zakat.
Very good, mashallah, Brother Shoaib. So first, actually before that, I have to tell you the difference between sadaqat and zakat, because that's very important.
Okay.
So when we talk about zakat and sadaqat in our language these days, we have this compartment of zakat being an obligatory charity and sadaqat is a non-obligatory random charity, right? That's how we use, Brother Shoaib, right?
Correct.
But when Islam used from Quran and Sunnah, these are the classical sources. We are not going to these scholars of the second, third.
Correct. Good. Yes.
Islam used, means from the original textual standpoint, Quran and Hadith use these words interchangeably.
Okay.
So, because when we describe sadaqat, charity, we would say this: there is obligatory sadaqat, which is zakah, and then there is voluntary sadaqat, which is random charity. Because sadaqat have that's how we do this. But from the Quran and Sunnah standpoint, they use this interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the context, you have to identify that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about obligatory charity. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Rasulullah is talking about non-obligatory charity. Now, when it comes to, let's say, one of the example which is the most repeated in the fiqh of zakat class, and you are going to hear that today, inshallah. Surah Tawbah at 60, where Allah says, "Innama sadaqatu lil fuqara," where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving his 8 categories of zakat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word sadaqat. Innama sadaqatu lil fuqara, that charity means charity, but obviously if you see any translation, you will see zakat because it's an obligatory charity. Zakat is for 8 people. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for the poor, for the needy, and I will discuss about those recipients later. So this is one ayah, Surah Tawbah, ayat 60, which is very profound about the concept of the recipients and the zakah in the Quran. One of the very famous hadiths, which is actually very scary, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from hellfire. Ameen ya Rab. One of the hadiths in Sahih Bukhari, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam emphasized on this, and he says, Man atahu Allahu malan falam yuaddi zakatahu. He uses the word zakah. Falam yuaddi zakatahu. Muthila lahu maluhu yawm al-qiyamah shuja'an aqra' lahu zabibatan. So Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever is made wealthy by Allah, whoever have a wealth more than the nisab, and we'll discuss about what is nisab, and he does not pay zakah on their wealth, on the day of resurrection, on the day of judgment, as a punishment for not paying zakah, their wealth will be made a poisonous, bald-headed male snake with black spots, and that snake will going to encircle his neck and will bite the cheek, and they will going to say, Ana maluk, Ana kanzuk, I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure, you didn't pay zakat from me. And this is very scary hadith, and Rasulullah is using this style, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to make sure that we become optimistic and not pessimistic. Remember this, so that we can pay zakah and we can actually fulfill our obligations. So I would say these two, one ayah and one hadith, will be sufficient, because it's a very big conversation on this topic. But I guess this will be sufficient, Brother Shoaib, inshallah.
Okay. Shukriya.
Absolutely. Now you can we can have the interaction in whatever way we can, because subhanAllah, I told you that this is a big topic. I don't want to keep speaking. So you can ask. If I know, I will answer, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam Sahib. Thank you so much for this lovely introduction. I think the most burning question that people keep asking is the zakat on their retirement accounts. So if you can start with that first, inshallah.
Okay, so let's start with retirement plans, inshallah. Do you want me to start with? Let's start with the general. First, we can start with 401k. Actually, before we can start with 401k, in order to understand 401k better, I would say it's better for us to start understanding zakah on a stock exchange, stocks and shares, because that is related, because most of the 401k are invested through mutual funds, and mutual fund investment are through stocks. So if you weren't able to understand zakat on stocks by the contemporary scholar, then there will be a hardship for you to understand zakah on the 401k, and then you'll move on to the property and renting and real estate, inshallah. When it comes to zakah on stocks and shares. So first of all, what is shares and stocks? I'm assuming you all know this. You may own a share in a company, or as some people you may own a stock in the company. So a stock or share is a unit of ownership in a company. So back in the days, they used to issue as paper certificates, but most people nowadays never see a paper certificate, because it is an online broker. Purchasing a share does not give you control over the management of company. It's not like a donation to the masjid. It's like a donation. But what you gain from the upside growth of that company. If the price increases, your ownership value will increase in the company. If the company makes a profit, then they cannot reinvest it in the company activities. Then they will pay you in a dividend. Is it halal or haram? So remember that the general principle scholars agreed with, that if you are investing in the stock market or in a 401k or in any retirement account or education account, then the shares and funds that you are investing should be halal or as halal as possible. So you should try to avoid investing in sectors like alcohol, pornography, tobacco, drugs, gambling, so on, adult entertainment, whatever. Basically, any clearly black and white haram institute, you should not do it as a practicing Muslim. As long as companies' primary earning activities are permitted, it engages in any secondary, then it's fine. If it engages in any secondary earning activities which are forbidden or are questionable, it is still permissible based on the 90-95% of the halalness of the company. Although ideally we should aim for 100%, but realistically speaking, it might be difficult nowadays to go for the 100%. Then you have to basically go through the process of purification, that you have to give extra charity to purify your wealth. If it's 5, 10, 6, whatever the percentage, but majority of it have to be halal. But anyway, this is from the fiqh of finances standpoint. Now let's come to the how to give zakah on these shares. So primarily there are two kinds of shares from the zakah standpoint. One is that you are buying and you are selling on the same day. You are selling the other day, within a month. You will be considered as an active investor. How you have to give zakah, and basically the terms in the stock market are swing traders, short-term, day trading, trading intention. All these terms are used. As an active, if you are an active investor, you don't have to do any calculation. You give 2.5% of the worth of the stocks, because you are basically, that's your business inventory, because you are buying and you are selling, whether in a day, whether in a month. If it's less than 360 days or in a lunar year, if you are doing a transaction, then you have to give 2.5% like any other zakah. So there is no rocket science in that calculation. The issue will come when you are buying as a passive investor, when you are investing, holding a shares, whether it's mutual fund, education fund, index fund, whatever, for longer than an year. Now you are no longer an active trader. So you need to ask this question: am I holding this share for more than 366 days in a year? Am I receiving dividends? When I will going to sell? Is it after 366 days? If you say yes, then there are many opinions. I won't confuse you because it's not an academic class, but I'll tell you what the majority of these scholars agreed. Is that clear? So majority of these scholars, who's majority? Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, 59 countries send their best mujtahids in one room, and they agreed on few points and resolution. And one of the resolution was on the how to give zakah on the passive long-term invest, if you are a passive long-term investor in a stock exchange. So they said that I can write the formula here, that you will going to see, first of all, you can give 2.5%, that's fine, but you don't have to give an entire 2.5%, because they would say that you have to see the financial report at the end of the year, and you have to see how much is the cash, in the company, how much is the receivable in the company, and how much is the inventory in the company. So cash plus receivables plus inventory, you have to divide that with the total outstanding shares which company have. And whatever answer you will get, you will multiply that with the numbers of shares owned. Then you will going to get the zakatable wealth. In this way, you're not giving zakat on 2.5% on the entire thing. Basically, you are giving zakah on 1/3 of the wealth, because cash, receivable, inventory is 1/3 of the entire company. So in this way, and why they would have this formula? Because for the people who invest their 100% wealth in the passive, as a passive investor, for them, this will make a huge difference. This will make a huge difference, because they will say that zakah is not on the buildings of the company or the machinery of the company, because they are fixed asset. Zakah is only on the cash, receivable, inventory, and they would divide that with the total outstanding shares. Whatever you will get, you will multiply with the number of shares you have, you will get the total number of zakatable wealth. Apply 2.5% and give zakah. This is what majority of our classical scholars for the last 2 decades have agreed, almost 2-3 decades, and this is the most popular opinion. There are other opinions, but this is the most popular in all the mazahib in all the countries. Is it clear before we move on to the 401k? Okay, let's move to
can you please make a calculation a little bit easier? I mean, that's going to be a nightmare.
Okay, let me do this. Let me do this. So if I guess it's Mushtaq bhai, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
I hope Mushtaq bhai, you are fine. Okay, let's start. So let's say, let's take, for example, you have ABC, Microsoft. Let's say Microsoft is a company. You will see the financial report at the end of the year. You will figure out that, okay, cash plus receivable plus inventory. When you combine all these three, you will going to get 35 billion. You will get 35 billion. Then you will going to divide by total outstanding shares which the Microsoft have issued. Let's say 6 billion shares have issued. So you will say 35 billion divide by 6 billion. And then out of the 35 billion divided by 6 billion, you owe 100 shares of Microsoft. When you do this calculation, you will get around $584. $584. This is your zakatable wealth. Now, what you have to do, you have to apply 2.5% in this 584, and almost $15 will be zakatable. Is it clear?
Yes.
This is according to vast majority of the scholar. There are 4 or 5 different opinions, but
Sheikh Asif, sorry. So the real issue here is not so much the calculation itself, but the fact that you know, if you own through mutual funds, you may literally own hundreds of your company's shares, right? So to do that for 500 or 600 companies every year is not practical.
Not realistic.
Yeah.
I will come to that. I'll come to that, mutual funds and everything. Just give me
Okay,
5-10 minutes.
sure.
Who was that? Shoaib bhai?
No, that was Mansoor.
Oh, Mansoor bhai, inshallah. Mansoor bhai, I will come. I'm coming to that, inshallah. This 401k and mutual funds, inshallah. And I know it's when I gave this answer to most of the people, they said even for small, it's very big headache, subhanallah. And it was okay, we'll give 2.5%. It's better to give more because poor will get more profit and you will get more reward. Just FYI. But if this is going to make a deal breaker for you, if you are in that capacity where it will going to cost you from 2.5% to 1%, let's say the entire thing, 1 million difference, then you have to know what is obligatory and what I'm giving extra, right? Okay, now let me come to the 401k, and then we're going to discuss within mutual fund. So 401k, again, these are new issues. That's why you see scholars will going to have a lot of disagreement. But again, I'm going to tell you, actually, I'll tell you 3 opinions in 401k. I'll tell you one, the Majma opinion, and I'll tell you local American scholars. Some of them went with the Majma opinion with the 59 countries, what I've just mentioned. And then some of them went with other opinions. So I've mentioned all those 3 opinions, and all these opinions are basically valid because all of their evidences, I saw 5-6 opinions, but these 3 are the most strongest opinion. You can pick whatever you want, inshallah. Because in terms of evidences, these 3 opinions within those 5-6 are very strong. That's my personal feeling. And I'm no one, by the way. When I say, obviously, it's coming from the authentic scholars. Let's start with Zakah retirement accounts. So again, everyone know the concept of 401k. It's an individual retirement account, IRA plan. Some people might have a different name, but it's the same retirement plan. 401k is an investment fund opened by your employer or company, and both you and your employer contribute matching funds in it. And eventually after the retirement, you can access the money. That's how usually it works. Generally, you cannot access the employer's money until you are fully vested, means you have the legal rights to access those funds. And the amount that you invested can only be accessed, but only after a minimum time period or after retirement. This is very important and consequential. You cannot get the money back usually completely before that time period come or retirement come or any life qualifying event will come, like a death or a medical or education or first time home buyer, etc., etc. In that case, penalty will be applied if you are withdrawing from your 401k. And I guess most of us know this here. Then you have to give a lot of penalties. You have to give a lot of taxes before you will withdraw. Assuming the investment of 401k or any IRA, any retirement plan should be, first of all, they should be from Sharia compliant firms. But let's say, since there are several ways of giving zakah on it, there are several ways of giving zakah on it. But I'll mention first the Majma opinion, the opinion which the classical scholars have agreed in our time. They would say that zakah is only mandatory in accessible amount. So I will give you example. Let's say if you have 100,000 in your 401k in 2021. So they will give a formula that you have to give zakah on 0.5%, not on 2.5%. How much? 0.5%, not on 2.5%. And they have a calculation. I'll tell you that. If someone gives on 2.5% on the entire 401k, that's better. Poor will get the benefit. You will get the reward for extra ajr. But when it comes to talking about obligatory part of giving zakat, that's what we are discussing. Okay, they said 0.5%. How do you know this? Let's say if you, I'm the youngest right now. I'm 34-year-old right now. I'm 34-year-old right now. So let's say you will going if I have a 401k account, I have $100,000 in my account. in my 401k account. So what will happen? If I am withdrawing from that 100,000 amount while I'm 34 years old, can I get the entire 100,000 amount from my 401k while I'm 34 years old? Or will the penalties be applied? Tell me.
Penalty will apply.
Penalties will apply, taxes will apply. So if $100,000, almost 40% of the taxes and penalties will apply for the early withdrawal penalties. So I will, let's say if I have to see what is accessible today in order to give zakah, I have 100,000 in my account while I'm 34. I'm going to give, let's say, from 100,000, 40% will not be coming back to me if I have to withdraw today. So basically 60,000. And within those 60,000, most of the 401k investment is through mutual funds, is through shares and stocks. By applying the previous formula, how it works, depending on the company's output, based on the production and a retail company, it's almost a one-third portion. It's almost a one-third portion where the cash and receivable and inventory are of invested of the company. It's almost. If you are owning a manufacturing company, it will be less because less inventory are there. More of the machinery are there. Fixed asset doesn't have zakah. If you have a retail investment, then it will be little more. So if you were going to find some average of it, scholars said 0.5%, because in that case, if you will say, let's say 60,000 is left, 40,000 is removed with the penalty. Within 60,000, you will take 1/3 is zakatable because of cash, receivable, inventory. What is the 1/3 of 60,000?
20,000.
20,000. Within 20,000, if you will apply 2.5%, you will get 0.5% of the entire 100,000.
Correct.
So that's what scholars have said, which we can say majority of the scholars, that zakat is not on the entire amount, because first of all, your employer is contributing, then maybe government is giving you something, and then eventually there are penalties and then the taxes. So zakah is due on when I have to pay on that year when I'm, let's say, 34, and not about when I will withdraw and I will have to give on the entire amount. So that's why majority of the scholars went with this. There are other opinions also. If you want, I can share. Otherwise, I don't want to make it too academic. If that's okay, we'll move it.
I think that's okay.
Okay, alhamdulillah. But just remember this one disagreement between some of the local scholars who know the from the American calculation standpoint, they know the finance system, they know the 401k, and they know the Sharia also. They disagreed slightly. They said that you do not have to give zakah on 401k period until you'll get it. Once you will get it, whether withdraw early or you're going to get it after the retirement, and 1 year will pass, then you have to pay, because one of the conditions of zakah is you own the zakah. You own that wealth. So you have a chance of potentially growing that wealth, because you don't own that right now. It's technically on paper yours, but you don't have it right now. You don't have any authority. So basically it's a partial ownership, not tamlik tam. In that case, you don't have to give zakah until that money will come, and then you have to give 1 year of zakah. But that's a minority opinion within acceptable school of thought. So I would say either way is fine. Both make sense.
So just summarize, on the previous 100,000 401k, it is $500.
Yeah, absolutely. MashaAllah, good calculation, Shoaib, man.
Thank
Are you
you.
Gujarati? When I was in my business school, BBA, business administration, so someone was asking, why are you learning business? Gujarati, right? The Gujaratis are, for those of you who don't know, Gujaratis are very business-oriented people in India.
Absolutely, yes. I have very good friends.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody has out of, not in 401k, just as a personal investment, let's say S&P 500, 100,000. I mean, to expect somebody to do sit down calculation, he's going to have to quit job and everything, and then. So can you give us a formula? Is 30% a reasonable amount? I think at some point you have to make a guess. You cannot be, nickel and diming to the end. Otherwise, you can just you know. So according to your, this is 30%. What will be?
It depends. So if it is retail company, it will be maybe 40-50%. If it's a manufacturing company, 30%. So I would just overestimate, just to be on the safe side. I would say 40-45%. Even the scholar said 33%, 1/3. But I would just be generous, 40-45%. And I would do that. But remember this, this question is very important. This question is extremely important. When we are talking about zakah on the investment, that's little different than the 401k. Remember this, because when you're talking about 401k or any retirement plan, you cannot get access to that money. We are assuming this. If I'm investing money and I have the access that whenever I will call that person that bring my money back and he can bring it back or she can bring it back, then we have to give zakah on the entire money, entire value of 2.5%. Remember this.
Yes, we understand that.
Yeah, but obviously for this, we can say from anywhere from 33% to 50% based on the industry. If you don't want to go into the hassle, just do the overestimate a little bit and assume that inshallah it will benefit the poor and will benefit the giver also.
So can you then please say a few words about the real estate investments?
Yeah,
But before you go there, you know, there is the tax issue is still there, right? Whether it's long term or short term. So even if I've been holding it for 5 years, when I sell it to pay zakat, I'm going to lose about 30% of it, more with state taxes.
Yeah.
So it's still, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please tell me. So can you give me any elaborate? Can you elaborate this with the any example?
So no. So let's say the same Microsoft shares, right? So I own 100,000 in Microsoft. I owned it for 3 years or 2 years or more than a year, right? Now I have to pay. I'm to kind of calculate the zakat on that, right? If as you said, if I give 2.5%, 2,500, I'm clear. There's no issue there. Yeah. But let's say I don't have 2,500 sitting around, right? So I have to sell shares, and that's if I assume I have to sell all of those shares, then my tax liability is going to be about $33,000.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, that 100,000 is worth $67,000.
Yeah. Absolutely. So do you have to deduct that? You have to, you know, subhanAllah, one thing which I didn't discuss with you because it didn't come, that's why we didn't discuss, even from your individual zakat calculation. Should I tell you just in 2 minutes how you calculate your individual zakat before we can move on to real estate?
Please.
Because that will answer the question. And this is very important. I know some of you are, mashallah, gems in our community that you pay at least 10% of the charity. You don't even go for the 2.5%. But it's good to know, first of all, for the knowledge standpoint, that how much Allah is asking you from the obligatory standpoint. It's always better to give it more. We should not be stingy when it comes to giving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which, mashallah, most of the community members are not in that perspective. Okay, let's start this, inshallah. So I will going to share the screen so that you can see the, okay, okay, can you see the Word document?
Yes.
It's
Okay.
It's just coming up.
Okay, so let's say zakah calculation. If you have in your account cash in hand, $10,000. So you have cash, $10,000, and then you have in your current account or saving account, you have $10,000 further. So 20,000. Then you have from your 401k, you calculated 0.5%. You are getting, let's say, $5,000 after this calculation, right? Then you are going to see other, we're going to discuss real estate. So that's why I'm not adding it here. So let's say if the entire thing is $25,000.
Let's add long-term investments to it too, separate from 401k.
That's we didn't discuss, so that's why I didn't want to bother.
Oh, okay.
But let's add one of the. I will discuss long-term investment. Just give me a minute. So let's add $25,000 is zakatable wealth. Okay, I would say ZDD. Actually not zakatable wealth. Okay, 25,000 is clearly over the nisab. I'll tell you what is nisab, zakat threshold, minimum amount of money which makes you liable to pay zakat. Now, should I pay 2.5% on the entire $25,000? No. What you should do first remove monthly expense according to all the 4 mazahib. When I say mazahib, means for the 4 imams. Not yearly expense, monthly expense. They would say al-hajat al-asliya. So if I have to give school fees for the kids, grocery, anything, any payment. So let's say if it's, let's assume it's $2,000. So $25,000 minus 2,000 comes as 23,000. Is it clear? Should I
Yes.
pay on 23,000? Now there is a discussion and disagreement. If I have a debt, in America, most of the people have debt. Remove Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah for a minute. Majority of these scholars said that you have to remove the debt from the zakatable wealth before giving zakah. Majority. Imam Shafi'i says no, you cannot remove that. You have to, that is owned by the person. Zakat is the right of Allah. You cannot mix that. But let's assume what are the contemporary scholars are saying, because the dynamics of the debt have changed. If I am owning a house of $150,000, I would never give zakah for the next 10-15 years. You know what I mean? So modern day scholars came up with this. I would avoid using the technical terms of istismar and istihlak. I would say modern day scholars came up with this: debt for consumption and debt for investment. So istismar and istihlak, debt for consumption, debt for investment. On they said whatever the debt for consumption is, you have to deduct it completely. But whatever is debt for investment, you have to deduct annual payments, not the long-term payment. Is it clear? Should I give you? So basically, if I want to get married, I will come to Brother Yasir. I'm already married. I don't want to get married. I'm using this as an example. So I will come to Brother Yasir Najjar. I'll say, Sheikh, Brother Yasir Najjar, mashallah, Doctor, I want to get married. I have 5,000. I want 20 more thousand. Can you please help me? He gave me a debt. I have to remove that completely 20,000 before I can pay my zakah, according to majority, because that's for consumption. I consumed it immediately. As compared to if I am buying a house, if I'm having a student loan, which I have to pay for next 5-10 years, then how much I have to remove? Not the entire thing, according to majority, just one annual payment. So if I have $150,000 house, let's say, for the entire amount, but annual payment is 12,000. So what I will do, I will going to remove that 12,000 from it, and the amount will be, now the zakatable amount will be 11,000, and then I will going to give 2.5% on 11,000. Is it clear? This is rough calculation. If you want, we have make a calculator for our students of fiqh of zakah. If you want, I can send you Tahir bhai, and Tahir bhai can forward it to all of you. It have more details. Once you put the numbers, you will get the exact information. It have all the formulas, stock and exchange in 401k using the majority opinion. Is that clear?
A question. Can I have a question here? You're talking about monthly expenses only. Why not the whole yearly expenses?
So that's a good question. So when they would say, they would differentiate, the scholars would differentiate between the al-hajat al-asliya and debt. That debt, you have to remove it. By the way, there are scholars who would say even debt will be monthly. Remember this from classical standpoint, but majority went with annually. But they would say, how you will give zakah? You will not give zakah on your house. You will not give zakah on the money which you are using right now. You will not use zakah on the car you are driving and the things which you are using. That's a general principle. So they would say that, okay, how you would calculate in your local custom nowadays based on month. The condo association fees comes from the monthly perspective. School fees comes from the monthly perspective. Grocery comes from the monthly estimate. So they would say that al-hajat al-asliya in our time will be monthly expenses. But the debt will be considered as an annually, because zakat is an annual thing. But when I'm saying this, this is not agreed upon. This is just what I'm telling you is the majority opinion. And those of you who attended fiqh of zakat, they know that there are multiple opinions in every mazhab. In Hanafi and Hanbali mazhab, there are 3 opinions within this. And I'm trying to give you the simplified version or the sweet dish of the entire discussion, if you will.
I think part of the reason for the monthly would be that you're also going to get income for every month. So we're not paying, on that money either.
Absolutely. So we can discuss that also. You know when you have to give zakah? So zakah you have to give on 1 lunar year complete. Once the 1 lunar year will pass, you have to give zakah, right? Now the question comes, and this question, actually give me a minute. Okay, now the question comes. And that's where the disagreement is, but I would say the most easiest opinion, which is more easy for us, inshallah. Let's say if you give zakah, listen to this scenario. You give zakah on the 1st of Ramadan 2020. You don't have to give it Ramadan, but just make it easy. 1st Ramadan 2020. Now you have coming 1st Ramadan 2021. Your zakatable due date is coming. It will become obligatory on you to give zakah. When you are on the 1st Ramadan 2021, you saw that entire year passed. The minimum nisab line, the minimum zakat threshold line, you had more money, but then it went down and went up and went down and went up. You had loss in business where you almost had only $300 left in your account. And then you have 300,000 now in your account. And now you have 1st Ramadan 2021. But in these 12 months, you never had stability of above the nisab. You went up and down. Now my question to you is, when you are in 1st Ramadan 2021, will you give zakah on the entire amount what you own in 1st Ramadan 2021? Or will you see your entire year and you will say, okay, whatever was the up from the nisab level, I will pay into the zakah, and whatever it went down, I don't have to pay zakah because the 12 months have been passed. What you will do?
Entire year.
No. So this is a nice theoretical question, Sheikh Asif. Most people in our community, I don't think have to even come close to worrying about going below nisab. I have a little bit more slight question to the point you just did before this one, which was paying on the day that it becomes due. If you have a large amount, it's not practical to say that you give that entire amount in one day.
Yeah.
So what I've done is that calculate what's due on that day and then give it throughout the year, as as requirements come up, as needs come up, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. No, it's fine. It's fine. All these scholars say if there is a haja need, you can do the immediate or you can defer it. But there have to be a legitimate need. This person, the scholars say if a person is struggling and dying in front of you and you are holding it to give it to someone else, then you are sinful. But I know that that's the very rare case scenario. Most of us were going to find the need and cause, and then eventually we're going to give. You can basically defer it for 2 years and you can give immediate payment for 2 years also. It's absolutely fine, inshallah. But answering that question which I asked you, Hanafis and most of the modern scholars say that you forget what happens in the middle of the year. On the 1st Ramadan 2021, you will see that, okay, this is my amount in the bank account. I'll forget whatever happened in the middle of the year, and I will see that, and I will give 2.5% in my zakat calculator. That's it. Although majority classical scholars didn't agree with Hanafi, but most of the contemporary scholars went with the Hanafi opinion because that's easy to calculate. There's no, and obviously most of us get our bi-weekly or weekly or monthly paychecks. It will be extremely difficult if you will follow that guideline by the Shafis and Hanbalis. So just don't go into that hassle. Take the 1st of Ramadan, let's say, if it's easy to remember. And this is my amount payable if I have to pay $5,000 zakat. And then brother, like I assume that's Brother Khurram. If Brother Khurram said, then you can.
Hello.
Oh, who was that? So if that's $5,000, then you can divide based on different organizations, different individual. It's fine, inshallah. Now let's come to the rental thing. Real estate. Let's say this. So let me. Actually, we don't need to share anything in this. When it comes to the real estate, now real estate have three kinds of things. One is for personal use, one is for rental use, and third one is for you can say that commercial use. Personal use, rental use, commercial use. All scholars agree. All these scholars agree that you do not have to give zakah on the house which is in your personal use, even if there are 4 houses. If you have a vacation home here and then you have other home in, let's say, Palestine or Pakistan or Somalia, you do not have to give any zakah if that's in your use, even if you're barely using it. Is it clear?
Yes.
All
Okay.
scholars agree. Okay. When it comes to rental property, there are many opinions, but I will tell you the majority opinion. and that is you only have to give on the rental income, not on the capital value. Is it clear?
Okay.
And this is why the majority, majority of the scholars have said this. Again, this is a topic we discussed for 1 hour. I'm just giving you a summary version of it. Now the
But Sheikh,
discussion.
wasn't there an opinion that you have to give 10% if you're giving on the income as opposed to 2.5%?
Yes, there is an opinion. There is that opinion. There are actually 4 opinions about rental. Some of the Hanbalis went with this, but the majority of the authorized position of the 4 mazhab and the majority scholars in the contemporary time also have endorsed this, that from the evidence standpoint, you have to give only on the rental income. And they use one analogy. Should I give you that analogy?
Well, just clarify, is it 2.5% of the rental income or 10% of the rental income?
No, whatever the authorized position is 2.5%. 10%
Okay.
is unauthorized position, is a very minority position.
Okay.
And they use this one analogy. They would say if you, and they have a counter analogy also, but actually leave it because we are not discussing the evidences. We are not discussing who is right, who is wrong. We are saying only majority said this, inshallah. Okay, now comes to the commercial property. And that's where the disagreement is, and we have to understand the current scenario, and we have to, inshallah, understand these dynamics of the modern day fiqh. When it comes to the commercial use of the properties, now commercial use, there are, first of all, commercial use of the property, you can say that majority opinion, then Maliki opinion, and then there is Zahiri's opinion. There is one group of some of the modern day hadith scholars, not all, some of the modern hadith scholars went with Zahiri. Majority scholars said, apart from Maliki, I'll tell you what Maliki opinion is. Majority of the scholars, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, they said that you have to calculate, if this is a commercial property, then it's your inventory. And inventory, you have to give 2.5%. So basically, if it's $150,000 property, you have to calculate from the wholesale value, not from the retail value, although some scholars say calculate from the retail value. But let's say if you do from the wholesale value, following the Hanbali opinion, then you have to say, okay, if I have the property from $150,000, even if I'm selling it $250,000, some people say you have to do it $250,000 because it's a market value. But we are going with the opinion, let's say it's a $150,000, then you have to give 2.5% on $150,000 because that's your business inventory. Just like you will sell an iPhone and you will do a business, so you have to give zakah on that particular day of the when the zakat will be dueable. Similarly, this is your inventory because you're doing the business. This will happen every year. Every year, if you didn't sell the house, you have to give zakah. This is the majority opinion. Now comes Imam Malik rahimahullah. Imam Malik rahimahullah, and by the some of the Western contemporary scholars, when they were raised from some of our people who have this kind of a business and real estate, they would say it's unrealistic because many times you have 500 houses and you are going to have that for multiple years. If no one is buying it, every year zakat will going to eat the profit. And actually that's the same word used by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that invest the wealth of the orphans, otherwise zakah will zakah, otherwise zakah will eat that. So basically there's no harm in using that, because zakah is a penalty for saving the amount and not investing it. Let's just keep that in mind. We'll talk about that in objective. But now let's see. From the Maliki standpoint, what they say that you have to give one time 2.5% on the value. But if next year you are not able to sell that house, because it's a big amount, they would say that it will be hardship on the person to keep asking that you have to give it every year and he's not able to sell it. Just give it 1 year, and if you're not able to sell it, then next year you don't have to include that in zakah. Is that clear? Yes or no?
I think it is no.
Should I repeat? Means the concept is clear, or you don't? You see, you don't agree. That's okay. We obviously scholars didn't agree with them. I'm just
No. It's the concept itself.
Okay. Let me tell you this. Majority scholars said that you have to calculate the wholesale value and give 2.5% from it. Is that clear? Every year.
Okay.
Maliki says give it 1 year and then you don't have to repeat it, even if you have these, if you couldn't able to sell it for the next year. So only for 1 year.
Okay.
And Maliki's if you see from the business standpoint and from the objectives of Zakah standpoint, Maliki's here went smart. But from the literal standpoint of the evidences, majority said that no, we cannot create that exception because we don't have any precedent. Maliki said no, from the objective standpoint, from all the other maqasid standpoint, this is better. And they would have this differentiation between zakah al-muhtakir, but there's a long academic argument. There is one also opinion, Zahiris, they will say that there is no zakah at all on the rental property. And then you'll ask them, what's your evidence? They would say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the hadith, he would never ask us. But then the counter argument will come that back in the days, if he didn't ask that you have to give zakah on your, let's say, ABC manufacturing company, would you give zakah on it? Because Rasulullah never asked us. And they would say that no, we won't give zakah because Rasulullah never asked us to. They won't use analogy because that's not in their usul. So again, the counter argument is that that is very weak argument, because if you are saying that zakah will be applicable on the person who owns camels and who owns cow, because that's what Rasulullah said, and zakah is not applicable to the big gigantic, let's say, if Jeff Bezos become Muslim, zakah is not applicable on Jeff Bezos, because Rasulullah didn't mention that. That obviously goes above and beyond the concept of zakah. So I would say that these are the two opinions within the strong school of thought. Whatever you would select, it's fine because they both have their evidences, inshallah. Is that clear?
Imam Sahib, if let's say that I buy a commercial property for $100,000, okay, and this year I paid 2.5% on it. Next year, the value of the property has gone up, but it is below my expectation. I want to make more profit out of it, that I will sell it only when it is 25% more. So every year the property's value is going up, but I have not sold it. How much zakat shall I have to pay?
So again, if you're following majority, you're keeping on 100,000 because that's the value which cost you to buy this property. By the way, Dr. Saleem, you know this disagreement that some of the Hanafis and Shafis went with market value. You know this, right?
Yes.
So they would say that on that day you have to calculate appraisal and get the estimate of the market value. But the other side of the aisle went with the wholesale value, and that's what we are considering right now.
But my point is that let's say that I bought it for 100,000, I paid 2.5% this year. Next year it is 110,000, but I'm not selling it. Now I'm paying 2.5% on 110. In 5 years, when the market value is 125,000, I've already paid $25,000 on it.
Absolutely. So that's why I'm saying Maliki opinion does make a lot of sense if you see from this perspective.
Yes.
And this is some people might think, because we are so allergic to our great scholarly work, subhanAllah, they don't know why you're, see, subhanAllah, even Rasulullah said this, that sometimes zakat can eat the wealth, so make sure you invest the wealth properly. That invest the wealth of the orphans, otherwise zakat is going to eat that which is in their account. So this is extremely important for us to understand from the maqasid standpoint. So that's why, let's say one of the mu'tamirat in the modern day, MJA also, they went with the Maliki opinions, that Maliki opinion is better from the business standpoint. Otherwise, you will going to have a huge loss, especially in the circumstances where no one is buying the property and you're just keep giving to an person the big amount. Any question regarding how to give zakah? We haven't even discussed the recipients yet, but from the giver standpoint, anything else is left?
शोहेब साहब ने एक सवाल पूछा था पिछली दफा कि वो हीरे I'm sorry, Shoaib had asked a question that you don't have to pay zakat on diamonds, yet you have to pay on gold. Is that
Gold
true?
and silver.
Yeah.
Gold and silver.
So there is a general formula, Shoaib bhai. Whatever you are using, you don't have to give zakah on anything, whether it's diamond or pearl, and even according to majority, gold and silver, you don't have to give. But Hanafis make an exception for gold and silver. But majority said, no, even you don't have to give on gold and silver because you're using that. Not you, because for men, if they are using, they have to give zakah. Remember this. Whether diamond or gold or silver, remember this. Because it's haram. Only zakah al-hulli, only those permissible use of jewelry. So if woman is using, majority says you don't have to give zakah, but Hanafi says and Zahiri says, and I would say because all of us can afford, I guess we should follow Hanafi opinion because it's closer to benefiting the poor and closer to purifying the wealth. But evidence-wise, both are strong. So that's the formula. Whatever you are using, you don't have to give zakah. If you are using a Mercedes, you don't have to give zakah, and you are using, like me, 2007 Camry, you don't have to give zakah. You cannot calculate the worth. Whatever is in your use, you don't have to give zakah.
Okay.
Shoaib, you don't have to sell your.
Brother Tahir, if you are having a business of diamonds as an inventory, you have to give zakah. It's clear.
Okay.
I have also posted a question on the chat. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. No, I do my text.
This is Zahid Hassan, who had a question on the set that he has a formula that he wants to play. Can you read that?
Yeah. So I do my tax returns using H&R Block software. So it's very easy for me to calculate federal and state tax on IRA and 401k.
Yeah.
Brother Zahid, Jazakallah khairan. So I didn't understand. So basically, we should get your help, or what?
No. He has one thing he said before that. He has cash in hand. He's calling it A, and he's in 401k assets. He's calling it B, and then he has got IRA assets. He's calling it C, and then he's calling D tax on 401k for all of the. Okay. So then he has a formula zakat. He pays zakat on zaman like this: A plus B plus C minus D plus E plus F. So that's what he's trying to say. Look at that.
Good, mashallah. But I would say your F, I just saw your F is debt. So I would say, because of this distinction of these scholars, I would not use debt in and of itself. I would say annual debt. Because when you say debt,
Annual debt. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Then it's a perfect Sharia compliant formula. What it looks like, alhamdulillah. But again, at the end of the day, you have to remember that if we give more, we'll get reward. But we have to understand this from the knowledge standpoint. What is obligatory on me as a Muslim? But to give better, it's obviously better for you in akhirah and better for you even in terms of benefiting the poor and needy. Anything else? We have inshallah 15 minutes because I have another 3-hour class, subhanallah, from 1 to 3:30. So inshallah, I will leave at 12:50. And then inshallah, if you have any question, we didn't even discuss subhanallah recipients. Do you have any question on the recipients?
What about businesses that, like software businesses, right, that have no inventory, they have no capital assets to speak of, and if they don't have a, if they're not public, they don't have a established value either.
Yeah. So if you are a passive investor in that, investor for more than a year, you kept the for appreciation, then the same formula will apply. Scholars said it explicitly. If it's any company where there is no barely inventory or cash in hand, then the zakatable wealth will be less because obviously of the dynamics of the fixed asset. But again, to be on the safe side, it's better to give at least 1/3 because it will be beneficial. But if you want to be precise, yes, it will be a little less than others.
And if you're active, if it's not passive?
Active 2.5%. There is no details for this. For active, they would consider this as inventory because you are buying. At the moment you will see there's a profit, you will sell it. That's a business inventory. Business inventory will get 2.5%. But if you are a passive investor, you have actually invested in a company not to buy or sell immediately, but to appreciate the value, to let it grow. Then it's your basically passive investment as compared to an active investment inventory. Then this formula will apply.
So talk about the recipients anyways.
Yes. Okay. So recipients, 8 recipients. Now we know that from the ayah of the Quran, where by the way, Zakatul Fitr is also there. We haven't discussed it, which you have to give on Eid al-Fitr, which in our times you can say safely from $10 to $12, depending on what you are giving. It's wajib on everyone, but I'm not discussing Zakatul Fitr unless you have a question, so you can ask me, inshallah. When it comes to the recipients, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم. That zakat is mandatory. Zakat recipients are 8. First is poor. Second is needy. Third is zakat collectors or zakat workers. I will explain it to you. Fourth is those whose heart may be reconciled, and I can explain this to you. Fifth is fir riqab, those who are captives or those who are slaves back in the days. to free them. Sixth, al-gharimun, those in debt, those indebted. Seventh, fi sabilillah, in the cause of Allah. And eighth, wayfarer, ibn sabil, the travelers. Now, poor and needy is first of all, we have to know what is poor and needy, because before we can start, where we should give our zakah, locally or Palestine or Pakistan or Egypt? Tell me. What do you think?
Locally, I think first.
Yeah, that's what majority scholars said. Even Hanafis went with it's recommended if there is a need to give it to the local, but majority make it obligatory. Hanafi did not make it obligatory. Shafi, Hamli, Maliki, they said it's mandatory, it's obligatory for you to give zakah locally. And then they define locally, they would say the radius where the travel distance where you will start praying salah in a qasar way, where you are considered as a traveler. So let's say we would say 50-mile radius of the Worcester community, that will be defined as your local. Majority say it's actually obligatory. Hanafi say it's better. But Hanafi are the people who say that no, it's better also if there is a need outside, because we are one Muslim ummah, or there's a close relative outside, then you can give outside and it's better. So basically there's a disagreement between the scholars, and how to reconcile this, basically to give to wherever you will see that need, but don't ignore the local people, because the system of zakah is there so that the circulation of the wealth can become better. The people who are the recipients of zakah, they can have the wealth so that they can have the purchasing power, which will at the end of the day benefit the rich person, circulates the wealth.
Sheikh, a quick question. Should we consider the definition? Because the definition of poor, for example, in Worcester is different than definition of poor in Kashmir or Palestine.
So scholars, Brother Yasser, scholars gave two definitions. Before we can see the cultural definition, Hanafis versus the majority. Hanafis gave definition, if a person have less than a nisab, he's a poor. If a person have more than a nisab, he's rich. So, and what is nisab according to Hanafis? They would go with the silver nisab these days instead of gold because it's lesser. So they would say that around $500, because 595 grams of silver makes a nisab from silver. So around $500 in today's price is a nisab. So if someone have $450, he's considered poor according to Hanafis. And someone have, let's say, $2,000, he's not considered, even if he have $2,000 in his account, he's not considered as poor or needy. Obviously, Hanafis would ask you to remove the basic needs, and then you have more than the nisab. So they are not using common sense. They are using common sense. Majority, however, they would say that you won't define poor and needy based on the money you have. Majority, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbalis, and Ahlul Hadith and other scholars, they would say that you would define poor and needy based on the need, not on the based on nisab. Even if you have $20,000, but if you are responsible for 10 different people and you have a need of $22,000, then you are zakat eligible. So basically, if you see this category, Brother Yasser, to make it easy, if you are following Hanafi school of thought, you have to clarify your position before receiving zakat by proving that I have less than nisab. From the majority standpoint, the moment you say I have a need, just follow the basic protocols, obviously, because there is an abuse in our society. Then you don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details, and you can say, if you have a need, follow these forms, and then we'll give you, because it's at the end of the day, it's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, I would say that because there is so much abuse in our times that people are getting abusing this, so it's a responsibility of the wakil, middle organization like Masajid and all these things, to do their verification work properly. Just don't start giving it without verification. That's also a different thing.
Jazakallah khair. It does make really a lot of sense that we should take care of the local before the far. However, if we look at really, that's why I asked you about the definition. If we look currently at the poor and needy in our community, in the United States, they have more resources than maybe the middle class overseas. That's what I'm saying. So should we really have a kind of modify the definition to the extent to see, well, yes, we should really support those in need in our community as far as in need. While we know they take welfare, they take all kinds of resources from the government and they go around. Or should we give priority to those who really cannot even feed themselves overseas? That's the debating issue here.
So Brother Yasir, the problem is that scholars have on two different extremes. Now I'll tell you something which you have to understand, because you don't want to give a categorical statement when other people have other group of scholars. Imam Shafi and Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa says, in your case, Brother Yasir, it's better to give it outside because there is more need there if you can prove that need. Imam Shafi says it's not even only haram to give it outside, it's invalid to give outside. Means Maliki and Hanbalis won't say it's invalid. They would say it's haram, but you can give it. But Imam Shafi says it's invalid to give it outside. Now, when you have two extreme opinions, it's hard to give one categorical statement. However, you can reconcile. I'm not giving you their evidence. It will take 1 hour. You can reconcile. You can reconcile in a way that we are part of one ummah. If our brother and sister is in need in Palestine, or our brother and sister is in need in Worcester also, obviously we know the situation in Palestine and in Pakistan and in India. We can divide our resources. And nowadays, alhamdulillah, we have organizations. You have, let's say, ABC organization focusing on outside relief work. You can focus on them. You know yourself, some families there, then people can give it to you. And at the same time, as an institution, Worcester Islamic Centers, ISGW, ABC, we need to show to the community we are doing something for the welfare of our own community. So we have to do both, because there is a very difficult position to take one opinion when the other scholar is standing on the other side. Does it? Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair.
So yeah, so poor, needy, then there are other recipients. About the zakat collectors, who are the workers or employers of the zakat organization. You can give their salary from the collected zakat wealth, because Allah mentioned them as third category, but there is restriction. So Shafi says you cannot, basically this is overhead expense of the zakat organization. Let's say Brother Yasir have an organization in Palestine, let's say, and he operates from here, an ABC organization, and he will hire someone for the zakat collection and zakat distribution and bookkeeping. Imam Shafi rahimahullah says how much salary you should give. If you are collecting $100,000 annually for the distribution for your organization, Imam Shafi would say you should not have more than 12.5% income from the zakatable wealth. Why? Because Imam Shafi believes firmly it's an obligatory thing to divide your zakah in these 8 categories. Hanafi says no, you can give entire zakat to the poor and needy, forget the rest of the 6 categories. So Imam Shafi says no, you cannot give more than 12,500 to the zakat employer from the zakat money, because otherwise there will be abuse, which is very reasonable, especially in our times when you will see that some kind of abuse are there. Then there is 4th category, which is al-mu'allifatu qulubuhum, those whose hearts are reconciled. This is according to majority, this is reverts. Hanafis doesn't consider this category. Majority say you can give it to reverts, and Hanbalis and Maliki say you can even give it to the non-Muslim, not because they are poor and needy, but because to incline their heart towards Islam. But that's very controversial according to these scholars. If you want, I can actually go into the detail, but we don't have time. Then there is freeing the slaves, then those people who are indebted, then in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then in the wayfarer. This is it. Perhaps the last thing I would discuss in the zakat class is whom not to give zakah. So first, you don't have to give zakah to the rich person if you know that he's a rich person and considering he is poor and needy. You can give him zakah in any other recipient, but as a poor and needy, you cannot give zakah to the rich person. That's one thing. Second is if he is capable of earning, and if he is not earning, not making an effort, then you will first ask him, why don't you make an effort? If he says, okay, I cannot find job, I'm a doctor, I'm giving my exam and I'm working on gas station until I'll give my exam, then you cannot ask him, okay, no. Then you will do part-time job because you know he's giving his exam. Then you have to give him zakat until he will give his exams and become a doctor. But if the person is sitting at home, he's not doing anything, it's proven that he is the laziest person on the face of the earth, then you cannot give him zakat even if you have less than the nisab money. Third is non-Muslim. You cannot give him zakah, but there is exception. Hanbalis and Maliki says that you can use the 4th recipient category in some context. Again, I didn't give you details of it because of the time. You cannot give it to the close relatives. This is where the technical discussion. It's better to give it to the close relatives, but when it comes to the father, parents, and the kids, parents, kids, wife, these are agreed upon. You cannot give them zakah considering them as a poor or needy, because they are your responsibility. They are your responsibility. If you give them zakah, you will basically abuse. You give them zakah money to run away from your obligation. So you have to take care of them. And if they are in need of zakah, and if you are asking this question, should I help them? I will give you a virtual slap, right? That what kind of a ridiculous son you are. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from being in this state, and may Allah protect our parents. I mean, Ya Rab. So parents, kids, and a wife. This is, all the scholars agree that you do not have to give zakah because they are your obligation. Other relatives, like relatives when it comes to my brother or the widow of my brother, whatever, then it's actually better to give them zakah because they are your close family members. You will not only get the reward of zakah, but you will get the reward of taking care of your close family members. And the last thing is descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who are direct descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah said in Sahih Muslim, you should not give them zakah, but this is very controversial. Remember, this is hadith is sahih. But today, how can you prove if a person call himself, let's say in Desi culture, we say Sayyid is a person who have a family relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can you say that that person, first of all, he is connected to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Secondly, if he is connected, even back in the days when there was an issue of not giving zakat to the descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Shafis and Hanafis had a disagreement whether it's only Banu Muttalib or it's Banu Hashim. And they had the disagreement. If the classical scholars had the disagreement, and third, even they would say, those who consider not to give zakah to the descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if they are in need, we won't let them die. So back in the days, they had male fay, male ghanima. They would help them from the spoils of war. Now we don't have any of those things. If any person, even if he claims or she claims that they are from the descendants of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you don't have a system from the spoils of war to help them. You won't let them die. So contemporary scholars say that you have to help them. This is not the majority position, however, but this is within the four mazahib. There are opinions within the contemporary school of thought that you cannot let them die just because you cannot give them zakah. You have to help them. So it's very controversial about descendants of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's 12:47, so I will end, inshallah. Brother Tahir, is it okay?
Okay.
Jazakallahu khairan.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
One question. Can you elaborate a little bit on the category fi sabilillah? Is it the traditional narrow definition of al-jihad fi sabilillah, or it does include any activity fi sabilillah, which could be schools, could be Quran, could be interfaith, and so on?
Okay, that's a very good question. And I take this only as a last question because I have to leave, inshallah. So fi sabilillah, according to all the four imams only, before we can come to contemporary times, it was jihad, and Hanbalis added hajj. And this is, by the way, non-authorized Hanbali position. Contemporary scholar, and by the way, this is within all the mazahib, when they realize that nowadays we are barely doing jihad in the battlefield, it's kind of jihad of the intellectual, of the war of battle of mind and heart is happening. So they would include da'wah, according to all the contemporary four mazahib. They would say any da'wah activities which you are sure that it will going to increase awareness or make more people as an active, not an activist in the, obviously in a negative sense, but an activist in the community who are the du'at, who will be the da'i, then it will be, and then they would say it is okay to basically select a student, help them from the zakah money. He will come back, studies, and then he will going to serve the community. You can do this from the zakah money, help the students. Then they would say that any teaching or learning for whether you are, when you say interfaith, Brother Yasir, interfaith is very loaded word. So I would say any word, because there are two categories. Anything dawah related, where you are inviting people, telling them about Islam so that they can accept about Islam, because in the deen, versus having business relationship with the other faith-based communities. Both are important. Misaq-e Medina was important, and at the same time, dawah was important. So what we need to do, we need to have both. But when it comes to zakah money usage, if you want to use it, it will be dawah related activities. For interfaith, there is no justification, because you are increasing your business relationship, not necessarily you want to convert them, right? So basically you are improving your business relationship with the other community so that they can stay with you whenever any bad thing will happen to our community. Even though there is a room, if you go around with the Sharia, but majority says that then in that case, don't do it. So basically they would say dawah activities or any teaching, teaching about from the Islamic standpoint. When it comes to secular education, let's say you're sending your money to your brother who is studying economics in Palestine or Pakistan. You can send them if they will consider as miskin and fuqara, not in fi sabilillah. You can still help them from zakah money, but fi sabilillah have to be related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, it's a big discussion, and I know it's 12:51, inshallah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Jazakallah.
Do a small dua, then we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair.
وياك وياك. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا. I'll see you all inshallah. السلام عليكم.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.